Wondering why people are not volunteering as much as you'd like them to at your church? You may be falling victim to one or more of the 6 reasons we're talking about today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. AJ, welcome to the podcast.
Scott, it's great to be here every week as usual. It's the highlight of my week.
Is that true?
Actually, I really like doing the podcast, don't you?
I do like doing the podcast, yeah. And I'm excited about this week's topic. It's why people don't volunteer at your church. I think this is a chronic pain point for so many churches, and I'm excited today to dive into 6 reasons why this keeps happening. And they're all solvable problems, by the way, all solvable.
Mm-hmm.
And
it really has huge implications. You know, this lack of volunteerism, the lack of support that the ministry can cultivate out of the congregation. And I think it's so prevalent. It's become just something that everybody's used to working around. I don't think it's attacked as a solvable problem actively in most churches. I don't know if you kind of think this way or not. This is kind of just coming to me on the fly, but I think it's more so like, let's just do the best we can with what we have to work with, because the volunteer problem probably isn't going to get any better. And I think it's just kind of, disregarded instead of really intentionally worked on.
Right. It's like when Jesus said, hey, the poor will always be with us. And people go.
Pastors are like, we just aren't going to have volunteers.
But, and there may be, I think it's always true that you're always going to need more volunteers, probably. But when Jesus said the poor will always be with us, the conclusion to take away from that was not, so do nothing. Right. And likewise, just because you're always going to be needing volunteers doesn't mean there aren't ways to make it better, or to make things a little bit easier for you. And I'll say I've been on both sides of this issue. I've worked on staff in churches trying to recruit volunteers and felt that pain myself. So I'm not a person sitting here talking about something that I haven't experienced myself. But I'm also sitting here today, our ministry is here at the Malphurs Group working with churches. AJ and I both attend a church, we're not on staff at the churches that we attend. And so we're able to see this problem from the other end of the pulpit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interestingly, you and I are both newer to the churches that we attend now, after attending previously churches, for a pretty long time. And so we're seeing like, okay, I'm at a point where I would like to be engaged. And what is my church doing, in good things and bad things to engage people in volunteerism? So
that's right.
It's kind of a fun, maybe season of life and ministry for both of us to be investigating this from this perspective, and then working with churches that are trying to solve these problems and helping them
from the other end. So I think this episode, if you're a church leader, will be helpful for you, because AJ and I both have been able to see this issue from both sides of the pulpit, so to speak, and we're going to speak to the reasons why churches struggle and why people don't volunteer at your church. That being said, AJ, let's hop in to our reasons.
Right on. Number 1, talking about job security. And so this may be one that, I don't know, maybe some people say, oh, come on. But no, I think this is for real. There are pastors and staff members that want to be the ones doing things. And maybe it's not, I don't think they wake up every morning saying, I'm going to make sure we don't get volunteers, but that's the way it ends up working out. That by continuously trying to do it all themselves, it doesn't really leave room for volunteers as much as they may even think that they want volunteers. So it's a challenge for sure. And it takes a paradigm shift in mindset to release ministry.
Yeah, I get this because again, I've worked on staff in churches for I did that for over a decade. And I know what that's like. I know what that feel to go, I just, it'd be easier to do it myself. Whether it's putting the pro presenter slides together, well, it'd just be easier to do it myself versus having a training to volunteer to do it. Or getting the supplies together for student ministry. Yeah, I could have a volunteer do that, but to be honest, it's a chance to get out of the office and go to Walmart for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like there's things about it where we talk like we want to have volunteers do something, and then we can't conceive of being in ministry in a way that's different from being a doer of all the ministry. What would my day even look like if I wasn't doing all the things and I actually delegated things? How would I fill my time? And that is not something that most people in ministry want to talk about, but is a very real thing, where their whole self-conception of who they are in ministry and what their job looks like is centered on them doing all of the things. And so one reason why people don't volunteer at your church is because you're not willing to let go of things, to let people volunteer. And that's a harsh thing to say, but it is. AJ, I don't know, you've worked with a lot of churches like I have. Consistently that comes up. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
They're not letting it go.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I don't think this is necessarily a thought out intentionality.
No,
probably most of the time it's not. Sometimes just, especially the churches that they started off, maybe your church even started off, you are the sole pastor and program folder and, bathroom cleaner and everything. And it's hard to move out of that when you've been doing that for a long time, and to release things for other people to do. And I struggle with this for sure. Even, with my kids, even within our ministry organization, like, no, we can let somebody else do this. And Scott, you and I are kind of working on this right now with our certified guide process. But this last weekend we went camping. We got a little pop-up camper and everything, but my wrist was hurt last week. I had kind of a sprain, and there's, things that were going to aggravate it. And my wife's like, you got two able-bodied teenagers that can do a lot of this thing. And so when we were getting ready to go camping, it felt weird to be standing there. And I was like, hey guys, one of you come over and do this, one of you do this, to not be doing it. When I was like, oh, I can just do it with my left hand instead of my right hand. But, I ended up training two people to really take care of a lot of things related to our camper. And I think if pastors would take the time to do that, pretend like you can't, and just work on training somebody to do it, there's a lot of benefits to that down the road. Absolutely.
There's a moving on to number 2. It's really sort of the mirror image. It's a connected issue, but it's from a different angle. And the second reason why people don't volunteer at your church is because of some bad theology that has become pervasive in the church. I see this in both small and large churches, although it usually manifests a little bit differently. But it's this concept of, hey, we pay you to do this. So why are you asking me to do it? That's why we hired you. You are the professional Christian. And so I'm not going to volunteer because that's your job. Your job is to do all the things. And
this is a real problem.
And it's not a biblical perspective on ministry at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, we say, in today's show notes, there's kind of two sides of the responsibility, two sides of the coin of responsibility, I think, on this issue. And, every believer has responsibility to educate themselves in the scripture. To be learning about the things of God and what he wants you to know about himself and about how he's developed and designed his church. We have a responsibility individually to do that. But we're also talking about the responsibility of leaders of our churches. And we are there for instruction and to train people up. And if we're not training them up in the scriptures to understand what a believer should be doing in the church, in the kingdom, and a huge piece of that is serving. It's, growing in maturity, doing the work of the ministry. Then we're just leaving out a whole piece of the Christian life. And I think that's where the majority of the responsibility falls is let's train people up properly in this. And that doesn't mean, one sermon a year on, saying you should be doing more. This is stuff that this should be sprinkled throughout your year, as you're planning sermon series and the things that the Lord is leading you to teach people in. And it's avoided a lot of times, like money,
Right. Yeah, totally. So our first two reasons why people don't volunteer at your church are really mirror images of one another. One, either you as a leader, you're not willing to let things go because you see it as your job. You go, well, this is my job. I'm the professional Christian. Therefore, I ought to do X, Y, and Z. And I can't really think of what my life would be like if I delegated these things. So that's problem number one. Number two is the people projecting that view onto you, going, well, we pay you to do this, so why would I? And they, as AJ's kind of pointing out, they can be self-perpetuating. So if you view yourself that way and the people view you that way, and then you don't allow the Holy Spirit and you don't allow the Word of God to bust that bad theology that's in both yourself and in the people, then you're going to continue to have a chronic problem and you're going to continue to feel burned out. So what often will happen is you have no problem letting go of things like you recognize easily, oh, I can't be a greeter at every door because there's only one of me. But when it comes to more complex tasks, you're not willing to release those things because you think, well, this is something that I should do. And everyone has a different line, but I would suggest that you can give a lot of leadership away, more than you probably are assuming that you can right now.
Yeah. I think a smaller portion of our audience might relate to also the churches that just pay for too many staffing levels. They put them on the payroll too far down the leadership structure. And, I don't think that's by any means the majority of our listenership, but there are churches out there that have been blessed with financial resources to the extent in which they hire more than they should. And then they depend on that. And I just, I don't know that that's the best stewardship of that type of gift. We should be training people up still to serve in levels of leadership beyond, greeting, holding the door open. I mean, let's give people more responsibility and engage them in greater ways and use those financial gifts for, a greater expansion of ministry instead of, building up the size of the payroll.
For sure. Totally. All right. Number three, a third reason why, and again, this is maybe still tied to these first two. They're related.
Yeah.
That's a cousin to it. Is that you as a leader are probably not investing enough time in leadership development. And so this perpetuates maybe problem number one of, well, I should just do it myself. If you don't budget time to invest in leaders, then you're not going to be very good at recruiting them. Because newsflash, no one likes for the only phone call they get from you is about needing you to fill in a gap. Like, oh, hey, can you fill in for me for this class? Or, hey, can you stand at this door and do this thing? If people want to send you to voicemail when they see you because they think it's just because you need something, that's a bad spot to be in. So taking the time to actually build real relationships with people so that you're building into them as disciples and as leaders in more ways than just asking them to do things for you. It's important that if you can build a culture in your church where people understand that, hey, when I serve at this church, I'm invested in as a person. That stuff matters. Yeah. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reprioritizing how you spend time every week is an important thing to do. I would encourage any of you to take the time to look back at how did your calendar get full and what are the tasks that you're doing. And if you click into today's show notes at malversgroup.com/109, we've got a link in there to some previous resources that we've talked about along this line as well that can help you make some priority and calendar changes. So yeah, be sure and do that. We'll give you that link again at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So be sure that as your one reason why folks are not volunteering is because you aren't developing them in other ways other than just demands on their time. They have to feel like they're not just a human resource to you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that they are people who you love and care about and are building into and developing as a person. When you do that, then asking them to help with things is a no-brainer, and they're happy to do it because you have relationship with them. I might get annoyed if I'm busy, I guess, if my wife says, "Hey, will you pick something up from the store?" But that may be just because I'm feeling busy. But there's no thought in my mind, because we have a relationship, I'm not like, ugh, I can't believe she would ask me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have
Yeah.
relationship. So I might be busy, but I'm not annoyed that she would ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah, even more so beyond relationship, partnership. I mean, that's what marriages are supposed to be like. And that's really how all of our relationships at church, especially between maybe leadership levels and other people that are just volunteering. I mean, if we really feel like almost more of a peer relationship, but this partnership of doing ministry together, then asking for help and doing work shoulder to shoulder together it's a joy in a lot of cases, even if the task might be tough.
That's right. Yeah. Like, so I don't want to minimize and go, well, everyone will just be so happy to do anything you ask them, but they'll feel differently about the fact that you asked them.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like, it won't be like, they're just asking for another thing from me.
Yeah. Right.
They go, oh yeah, this is a thing that we're doing together. Of course I'll help. Right.
Maybe invite somebody for that cup of coffee without any motive of, in the end, hey, could we get you to and maybe just enjoy some time together.
That's right. So if you're going to do that, you have to build your schedule around that.
Yeah.
And if you are too busy making copies and doing that run to Walmart, and then you don't have the margin to be able to do those kinds of things. It's self-perpetuating. Okay. Mm-hmm. Number 4, here's a reason why people are not volunteering at your church, is they don't feel like they're qualified to do so. They're afraid of failing. Mm-hmm. We hear this a lot, AJ, from volunteers, even when it comes to joining like the strategic leadership team that we put together when we're working with a church. They don't feel qualified. I haven't been to seminary, or I don't know the Bible as well as I ought to, or whatever. And so people have these assumptions that to be a leader in the church, they have to be, they got to have an MDiv or at least have gone to Bible college or something. And in reality, people need to be affirmed and also trained up in a way that they feel confident to serve. But everyone ought to feel like, no, I have a place to serve here. And I don't need to have gone to college to be able to be an effective volunteer.
We have a strong biblical precedent for people doing well in ministry without formal education and training in so.
Just ask all of the original disciples, right? For the most part. I mean, some of them were maybe well educated, but not necessarily well educated in Bible things.
Yeah. Yes. Most of them called by Jesus himself.
Right. That's right.
Paul standing out among the others as, a Pharisee of Pharisees, but yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, we gotta get people to feel like, hey, I can do this. And not only can I do this, but I have a call to this. I don't have to be a Bible professor to be able to teach this Sunday school class or lead this small group.
Yeah, you know what? I think you kind of touched on a little nugget there as well. I mean, there's people that probably feel a level of call that never get that affirmation. And I think that's a necessary piece. If you feel called, someone should be able to affirm that in you. And I think we probably have churches full of people that feel this nudge by the Holy Spirit and this desire to do something, but the church structure is never in a position to be able to recognize it and affirm it and then engage it. And I think we're leaving a lot of ministry on the table because of it.
Yeah, the church that I helped plant, one of the things that was a driving force for us was always wanting to help people figure out it was in our mission statement, but help people find their place in his story. And so something that was really important to us was just this slight shift of perspective. Instead of going, well, let's find a place for you to fit in the thing that we're doing. We wanted to help affirm the calling that God had on their life. Like we saw our role isn't to find a place for you to do our thing. Our thing is helping you, empower you to do your thing that God is calling you to do. And that those are not, I know that maybe again feels like a distinction without a difference, but it's not. Shifting the perspective from, hey, it's all about us, to, hey, we want to empower you to be a minister, to be, to be in ministry, so to speak. It does make a difference. People go, oh, I have a calling on my life. I don't have to, I can be an accountant and in ministry. I can be a small business owner and in ministry. I can be a hairdresser and in ministry. And yeah, because that's what we're all supposed to be doing. We're all supposed to be in ministry.
Right. Cool.
So, all right, number 5, AJ.
Number 5 is a faulty recruitment narrative. And there's a couple of layers to this as well. So first of all, we want to mention the most common way that leaders in churches seek volunteers is to talk about a pain point that the church is experiencing. And we've all heard the call from the pulpit because children's ministry is always lacking volunteers. And that's and especially, in August and September, when you're kind of ramping up back for the school year, it's like, hey, everybody, we really need you in children's ministry. But there's other things as well. And it's this coercion and arm twisting technique that has become so prevalent, almost expected. And you're going to get a handful of people, that are like, okay, I'll do it. And that's an ineffective way of engaging people in something, because what we're wanting is for them to come in and do something that's actually really great, whatever the volunteer position is, children's ministry or otherwise. And so what we're talking about in this point is switching that from that pain perspective to this profit perspective of what are the gains going to be on a multiple of levels? What are the gains for the church? What are the gains for the people receiving this ministry area? The people that are in it, that need you to be in it. And what are the gains for you as a believer to be engaging, hopefully, in an area that you're excited and gifted in. So there's a variety of gains, and people would be much more attracted to hearing about the gains than they would to be hearing about the needs and the downside of something. So we want to inspire and engage people in a way that drives them to action based on the positive side of something and not the negative side.
Yeah, there's another aspect of this too. This sort of, we're calling it a faulty recruitment narrative. And the other aspect of it relates to the sort of soundtrack that leaders play in their head that people don't want to volunteer. So that's why we do the arm twisting, is we go, well, people don't want to volunteer, therefore the only way I can get them to is if I guilt them into doing it.
Yeah.
So we have this baked-in assumption that people don't want to volunteer. That, people are lazy and they just want to come to church and they just want to be consumers and they don't want to be helping out or whatever. And so therefore, if we're going to get folks to get off their bums and do something, we've got to get up and on a Sunday morning and make them feel really bad about themselves until they do it.
Yeah. And
all of that is wrong. So you've talked about why we shouldn't arm twist like that in the first place, that's not that optimal. And I would add to that, I just don't think that you should believe that false narrative that people don't want to volunteer. Yeah. I think the people do. They may be, all the other things that we've just talked about may be true. They may feel like, well, maybe the pastor should be doing it, or they may not feel qualified, or they may not feel like they've been invested in as a person. So there may be other contributing factors that are at play here. But as a baseline assumption, you should assume that people do want to volunteer.
Yeah.
Your baseline should not be that they don't want to volunteer.
Right.
And on that same note, this is maybe a good segue to number 6, but I think I'm going to put it here for now. A lot of churches will do this thing where they won't let people volunteer for a certain period of time. It's common. I see this more and more in churches. Oh, we're going to wait till people are a member before they can volunteer, or they have to wait a certain amount of time. No one is more excited about volunteering at your church than someone who is new. You are creating a habit for them to get used to just sitting and soaking. And so if you are actively pushing away the most excited people, it's kind of your fault. You're contributing to this narrative, right? Of people don't want to. Well, you've created a breed of people that who maybe think that you don't need them.
Yeah. Especially new believers. I mean, if somebody new to your church, new to the faith, and told they can't, which has no biblical basis almost whatsoever. What is that like initial thing that they're being taught then? I think that really should be reconsidered by the leadership of churches that employ that. Yeah. Now I get there's reasons that they do it, and they're not invalid. But I think that's something that should be have another look at.
It's reasonable to say, if you're brand new to the faith or brand new to the church, there are certain kinds of leadership.
Yes.
Or certain positions that we don't want to put you in. But to bar you totally from volunteering completely, like that to me is insane. You can't help make coffee because for what reason? You can't hit next on ProPresenter. You can't wave to people and say hello and hand them a bulletin. What's your biblical justification for that exactly? And when you then create this culture then of people who sit, that's what you do. And then you blame them and say people don't want to serve. Well, we spent 6 months telling them they can't, and got them really used to being here not serving. And now we're going to project onto them that they don't want to volunteer. All of that is a problem. Yeah. So don't discount how the narrative in your own mind and the narrative that you project impacts the rate of volunteerism in your church.
Yeah. That's it.
All right. Last one.
Yeah. Our last point here, all the others, I mean, the previous 5, probably if you're having issues, one or more of those are there. But our last one here is probably the most common, and that's just really a simple lack of knowledge in how to develop an effective process and a clear process that we can work people through step by step, baby steps. The way to talk about it, the way to move them from point A to point B. There's a lot of best practices out there. And there's also a lot of variety and contextualization that you can employ for your church, in where you are in the culture that you're working in. But you need a system of recruiting people, of training them, of deploying them, of evaluating how well they're doing. And even then progressing them to different and higher levels of leadership and serving. So a lack of knowledge of really just how to do it. And this is probably the most common, whether or not any of the other previous 5 also play into the scenario. But people will just say, we feel like we've done it. We feel like we've tried, and we're just not sure what to do.
Yeah. I think don't discredit how confusing it is for someone who's new to get connected into serving.
Yeah.
It may seem perfectly obvious to you. Oh, they just need to fill out this form, or they just need to contact this person, or they just need to do X, Y, or Z. And, all they got to do is mark on their bulletin that they'd be interested in such and such. There's so many assumptions baked into that process. Mm-hmm. And it puts the majority of the burden on the individual to pay attention to the bulletin, to check a box, to whatever. Like there's all kinds of things that are baked into that. And just saying a thing that says, I'm interested in children's ministry, check this box, that means nothing to me. what exactly in children's ministry are you going to be asking me to do? What are the expectations? Am I qualified for that? So there are there's a lot of layers to this from the side of a person who is new. You've got to make it so simple and so clear that you can't mess it up, right? Like, do this step, do this step, do this step, and there be really good communication all along the way, so that everyone knows what they're doing. I recently was given a form that was supposed to help people figure out where they should volunteer, but the instructions on the form itself were extremely vague and not explained very well. So it was a little bit frustrating. And then people were then handed a list of volunteer opportunities, just random list of volunteer opportunities. And there was no connection between that list and that exercise that was being done. And so that was frustrating, because you're thinking, well, then am I just picking from this? Why am I doing this form if you're asking me then to just pick an opportunity from this list? Why not just give me this list? And what are you doing with this form? And I don't even know how to fill it out. So I think the church probably felt like they're doing a good thing. They're helping people discover their gifts, except they weren't, because the exercise wasn't explained well. And then what was that connection between that and the list of opportunities that they gave? Does this make sense, AJ? I mean, these are the kinds of things that happen all the time, where the church thinks, oh, we have a process. It's clear. It's easy. But from the perspective of the person who's going through it, it's not clear, and it's not easy, and it's frustrating. And every time those things happen, it creates a barrier between that person and them actually volunteering.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't have a high tolerance, AJ, for that. At some point, they're going to go, this is too confusing.
Yeah, right.
Never mind.
Most people won't have a very high tolerance for that, unless they really, they came from another church where they're super passionate about a particular area of serving, and they'll ignore all that. Like, I just want to get plugged in now at this place, doing what I like to do. Other than that, it's going to be the people that are like, okay, forget it. I'll just keep showing up a couple times.
Yeah, because newsflash, you're not the only thing going on in their life. They got their kids' soccer practice, they got their job, they've got whatever's going on at home. Yeah. So you create 15 layers between them and volunteering that is any degree confusing, and they're going to be out.
Yeah. Another kind of related point to that as well, because and I think a lot of churches are starting to figure out, what can we do to make things simpler, because people's lives are very, very busy. But if your volunteer opportunities aren't flexible enough that somebody could maybe just do this once a month, gosh, maybe even once a quarter, and instead you're like, oh, well, that's just not going to work. Sorry, we're looking for somebody that we can drive like a rented mule weekly. Then, you're also really cutting off a lot of people. And so if we could have more flexibility in that, like, once a month, that's awesome. I mean, because it's probably easier to find 4 people to do something once a month than 1 person to do something every week, or even 2 people to do it every other week. So
exactly right.
I think we've got to expand our points of view a little bit and make the barriers fewer.
Totally. I really believe that this is the number 6 is the biggest problem, is that the process is not clear. And when that's the Donald Miller quote, right? If you confuse, you lose. And that is very true. I think it's actually the same problem that we see churches have in getting people connected into small groups and classes. It's like not easy to figure out. And again, the churches don't think that. They think it's very easy. All you've got to do is fill in the blank. It's different for every church, but from the perspective of the leaders, or maybe a better way to put it is from the perspective of the people who have been in it for a long time, they assume that it's easy. Yeah. Well, I figured it out. It can't be that hard.
Yeah.
But when's the last time you were
crossover? Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of crossover between the volunteer. This volunteer list we could do probably a companion episode on small groups engagement, but yeah,
totally.
For sure.
So, I don't often do this, but I will say this issue of what we call mobilization is something that we specifically address in our leadership pipeline design work, in helping churches think through how can we get better at recruiting volunteers, and how can we make sure that we have a process that is not confusing to the average person. And so if you're sitting here going, well, that's it, you've hit your finger on exactly what our problem is. All the other 5, I think we're probably okay with, but we really don't have a clear process. Then contact us. Go to malfersgroup.com, find the leadership pipeline section. You'll be able to find that from our homepage. Get in touch with us.
Yeah. Just go to malfersgroup.com/109. That's this episode number. And there'll be a clicker thingy right there. I don't know what it'll look like yet, but I guarantee there'll be something there that you can learn more about leadership pipeline design. You can learn how to contact us. The other resources are on there, in addition to the YouTube video version of this. If you're listening and you would like to maybe huddle up the team and talk about, hey, maybe we could do better at volunteering, let's watch this Malfers Group video, and then maybe also go through the little discussion questions that they've got in the description down below, and have a little chat. I think you could probably come up with some things that maybe you could improve on to have people engaging your church in serving at a greater capacity.
Normally I say something like, I'm not trying to sell you something. But in this instance, I actually am. I'm so bullish on how important having a good mobilization process and leadership pipeline is. Yeah. I really believe it's the gap in so many churches. It's not the only thing. The things we deal with in strategic envisioning and mission and core values and discipleship pathway, vision, strategy, all those things we call them fundamentals, and they are essential. But the biggest gap I see in so many churches is we're just not developing leaders. And because of that, churches are really struggling. Just maybe a way to close this up, AJ.
Yeah.
A church that I've had the opportunity to partner with over the last couple of months, they had they're having to transition how they're running children's ministry for a few different reasons. And they really took it on their shoulders that they had like a month or a month and a half that they really needed to transition the way that their children's ministry is structured. And so they created some new volunteer positions, and they made some shifts on staffing and so on. And in a month and a half, AJ, they were able to recruit the volunteers they needed, create job descriptions, create a lot of clarity around how these different positions are going to work. And it's just amazing, like, to see how much life it's breathing into this church and into that department. And like, I get excited about it, and so do they. Like, they keep talking about how great this is, and I can't get the smile off my face. I love seeing churches take hold of these principles and see the difference that it makes, not just for the staff, but for the individual people and for the families in these churches. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I'm super excited for them, and I'm really proud of them as well. Well, this has been a transformational year for that particular church. We would love to be able to say that about your church as well. And that's why we do this week after week. And we produce the resources that we do and offer the services that we do to help your church thrive. If you would like any more information about that, please go over to the Malfers Group website and look at any of the ways that you can engage with us. And we would love to have that conversation with you. Until then, we will be praying for your church and for it to perform within this world as God has envisioned for it to do. And we'll be excited to have you back with us next week.